Antes que formases la tierra y el mundo, tú eres Dios. Antes que naciesen los montes, las montañas, tú eres Dios. Oh, sei Dio, ab eterno in eterno, che ha creato l'universo, Dio potente in ogni età. Rende tutta la creazione, vero Dio, che non hai
May the blessed peace of God and the grace that is in my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ be the one to govern in the church, beloved of this place, and the universal church. Your brother has the blessing to be able to comment to you my testimony of conversion. And even though I had said it in multiple occasions to family members, friends, and to those who I know, in my soul, that hymn does not cease to exist that says, "It is pleasing to tell of the story of Christ and of His love, and how the Lord made His work in me." Your brother has that beautiful privilege to be a doctor by profession. I studied during 8 years in this career, and during the first year of my studies, your brother, as all youth, in the illness of adolescence, at the early ages, I had my circle of friends, and, entertainment, laziness abounds, but there was a companion in my studies that distinguished herself among all my friends. At a distance, I saw that she wore long dresses, her vestments, her behavior was different, her language was distinct. But further than that, what made her different was that every time she had an opportunity, she was speaking of the church where she persevered. And brethren, every time she had an opportunity, not caring that we were gathered, a group of friends, sharing, she always spoke of the doctrine of her church. She spoke of the things of God. She spoke of the order that existed where she assisted, and this made many friends stop talking to her. But it made your brother more interested to learn more. My parents had always taught me that out of respect, we must hear the beliefs of others, and when someone spoke of the things of God, we must always take a spiritual benefit, and it is always good to hear what others have to say. This friend began to speak to your brother a little more of how the order of the brothers on the left, the sisters on the right. She spoke of the choir hymns. I had never heard a choir sing of any church. And she spoke how they dressed, the vestments that the sisters wore, the veil. And in the mind of your brother, I only imagined, how would it be? What special does this church have? Your brother persevered in another congregation. I participated actively of all gatherings. And I also had a group of friends in church that, within quotes, I shared the word of God with, but this word was very different. And little by little, she was inviting me to her church, and I did not move myself by my own will, but authorization of my parents. And so I told her one day I would go to your church. And she, inviting me once again, seeing a strategy she invites me to a surgery with her father that also is a doctor. It called to my attention to be inside of the surgical room. It was my first time. We spoke, and a conversation that was very friendly took place with her family. And afterwards, we went to go share a meal in her home. She presented to me her sister, her mother, her brother. And in the meal, the father of the family approaches me and says, "Louis, do you have a few minutes to speak of the Word of God?" And I respectfully said, "Of course." I remember that we went out of the home to his patio that was prepared with its outdoor couches. He had a Bible in his hands with a very distinct logo. And the talk approximately lasted 15 minutes. And the brother only utilized 3 or 4 verses that I can remember. But I tell you with all of my heart, beloved Church of the Lord, in those 15-20 minutes, it was enough for God to open my understanding. And I began to see the things in a very distinct manner. Brother, in that moment I understood that unto this date I had not done anything for my salvation. Even though I participated actively where I congregated, in that moment something changed within my heart. And it was a beautiful moment that the brother gave me a hug. We both cried. And believe me, brother, from that moment, I never returned back to where I congregated. Brother, the worry to return to my home, as there is a hymn of the choir that now says, "Return happily," my parents said, "That is not true." My family was waiting for me. They were at home. I did not know how to arrive amongst them. I had something that burned within my heart. And they invited me and said for me to arrive. And I would say in my mind, how can I explain what I have just heard if I did not know absolutely anything of the things of God? And I remember having taken a Bible that was filled with dust. That was the only one we had in the home. And I approached where my family was. I sat down, my hands shaking. And when my family begins to see me cry, they say, "What's wrong? What's going on? Do you feel bad?" And I say, "No. There is something in this book, I don't know where, that I heard this evening, very beautiful things." And my family begins to naturally dialogue with me and ask me, to question me, "What did they tell you? What have they convinced you of?" I cannot explain, but I know who can speak to you of these things. Brother, we made a date so that my family of my wife can come to the home, and kindly they arrive and participate of a meal with us in our home. And before they arrived, your brother, being a listener of a few days, my heart was praying before the Lord that God also open their understanding, that He not leave them out of this beautiful blessing, because your brother that date was so convinced that something that we needed to take advantage of. Nevertheless, there was a resistance from my family. The brother barely was able to speak, was not able to unravel the topic, the doctrinal point or the evangelical points, and my family in that evening did not receive the Word of God. But the brother asked a question, who was a doctor, and asked, "But do you allow me to come for a second time? Could I return for a second time to have another talk?" The family agreed. A week later, we make a date to gather with the brethren. And that night, the things were very different. By the blessing of God, my mother, my father, I have a sister, and my brother, we are 3 children, 3 siblings. We all heard attentively the Word of God. And not 2 months later had passed when there was an announcement that there was going to be baptisms in the Church of the Lord, and all of my family members decided to go into the baptismal waters. The work was in all of my family. And from that day, I can tell the entire church present in this place and the church present universally, and those who see these transmissions, that we had never known a peace so perfect, not a joy that was so true like the one we enjoy of in the Church of the Lord. My mind has present that 4th of December of 2011, because in this year, my family and I are 10 years that we belong to the Church of the Lord. And until this day, we can say with all liberty, we have never been so happy. And who do we owe this big blessing? To an apostle of Jesus Christ. We have believed firmly in the election of God. All of my family continues to persevere in the Church of the Lord by the blessing of God. He has embarked him in His grace. And in this place, we send to tell the apostle of the Lord that God bless him, that God pay him where he is at, and that us from this place, from El Salvador, your children in Santa Ana and Sinaí, where your brother perseveres, and the entire church in the Republic of El Salvador, love him with all of our hearts, and that we are awaiting him with our arms open, and that this testimony that your brother says be for the honor and the glory of the Lord.